This episode, I'm going to talk to you about things that are both strange and unusual. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Yeah, here we are. It is February 15th? Yeah, 2026. We're talking 11:06 at night. And I'm recording episode number 249. Next week is going to be a big one. But, of course, that just so happens to be from a perspective of the fact that, well, this episode is coming out on February 28th, 2026. On February, it'll be over. The next time after this will be March 7th, and that episode is going to be very, very interesting because first of all, it'll be episode 250, and I'm going to talk about a lot of things that are, well, related to 250 since it's the 250th episode. That just seems like it makes a lot of sense. But I'm also going to go a little different, and I'm going to change up the segments a little bit. I'm going to remove, for the first time in, well, since I've came up with the segment, fill in the blank. And I'm going to replace it with one of those other two segments that I've been alternating over the last couple of weeks, which is the question from the magic book, or the three things that are combined with one thing that is similar between them. And I'm going to use both of those segments, and one's going to be the beginning, one's going to be at the end. And I'm going to take away the fill in the blank segment starting in March. How long it'll be gone, well, I'm not really sure. It's like everything, it's all about feel. It may return, it may not return. Heck, the questions in the book keep coming back, right? So, what's to say that the fill in the blank segment won't return as well? But that's business for what will be next week by the time that this episode airs. 2 weeks from now. What I will be talking about is the strange and unusual things that I have noticed throughout this thing that we call life. Specifically, my life. Stuff that I saw that was just not quite what you'd expect. Things that were a lot different than you would have imagined, and stuff that is probably best described as you had to be there in order to actually believe it. And that's pretty much where these things are going. Now, as far as that episode goes, and the things that happen while I'm going to be describing them in this episode, well, I look at this stuff and I ask myself now, I mean, if I were to be the person who was flipping through YouTube and found this video and were listening to this crazy guy tell me about the stuff that he saw and how weird it was, or how unusual some of the things were that he came across, how likely would I be to believe him? Well, I can completely understand why you might think that, because just looking at my notes, like I said, I would have some serious questions for this individual as far as the things that he's speaking are they real, or did you just really make it up? Now, granted, some of you have listened to my Fact or Fiction episode, and one of these things that is in my notes was actually something that I put in my fact or fiction episode. And it was a fact. We're talking, I probably used it 2 years ago, maybe even three. It's been a while. But because I'm talking about strange and unusual things, there's no question that I had to bring it back up. Let's just put it to you this way: the idea and thought behind the fact that this really did happen, man, I tell you, it's just, it's super crazy that it really did. But I'm telling you now, it really did. All these things that I'm about to talk to you actually happened. But, again, they're very strange and very unusual. So, I will go into this, which will be the final time for quite a while, or it could only be maybe a week. Depends on how I feel that it went over the next couple of weeks when I start alternating those other two segments and actually putting them both in the show. This will be the final fill in the blank for a while. And I think that it would be appropriate to go with a question very simply: why am I ending the fill in the blanks? Well, the answer is very selfish, actually. I like the idea and I love the name, but truthfully, if you notice the way that my show has been built into different segments since the beginning, when I started adding different stuff to it, the main event is always where the the what do you call it? The main part of the show has always been. I've always done that opening sort of monologue, a little bit of talk here or there. I never leave without the spear of the week. Every once in a while, there's a week where, well, nobody was deserving of being speared. I had a segment, Don't Go to Jail. I mean, these are things that I would add from time to time, and they entertained some people, and of course, myself. Then, of course, I came up with the book of questions and would read one of them and answer the question. And this three items that are together, and what do they have the same? That's a fun one. I've been looking to do that for probably 2 or 3 years, realistically, and I just decided to act on it now. But the reason why I would stop the fill in the blank segment for a while is, well, like I said, it's very selfish. After a while, I want to try to change things up a little bit, freshen up a little bit. Getting ready to go into the month of March, and I've been doing fill in the blanks for a while. And like I said, I love that episode. I love doing it as a segment. But I think it's time to maybe freshen up a little bit, do something a little different. Going on the 250th episode. Um, as you're hearing this, it would be next week, March 7th, 2026. So try to make that episode a little bit more special by maybe changing the format a little bit. See how that goes. So the question is, why am I getting rid of the fill in the blanks? The answer is really to sort of freshen up everything from my selfish perspective. And now, a segment that'll never go away. It's the whole point of the show, realistically. The main event. The bell is ringing, and here it comes. Strange and unusual things that I've seen. This requires a little sip. as I'm looking down, I'm thinking that the most strange and unusual thing I'm going to save for the end. And I guess the one that was probably the least, but still it was weird. Uh, that's where we're going to start. And this happened as I'm recording this on February 15th, 2026. This incident happened on like February 10th or 12th. It was somewhere between, it was somewhere in that neighborhood. The exact date, the 12th? No, it's definitely not the 12th. Huh. It was the one in the middle. It was actually February 11th this happened. And I can definitely tell you that from my perspective and from my money, this is both strange and unusual. I go and I pull into a parking lot, ShopRite, I believe. And as I'm pulling in, facing forward, so I can just pull my car right out and drive without any issues, no reverse. I look across the lot at the next line of cars, and there's a guy standing behind his car. He just parked. And he gets out and he goes to the trunk. Now, as he's just sitting behind at the trunk, getting ready to open it, another vehicle pulls up. And I'm telling you, I may not have the best vision in the world, but I can certainly tell you when somebody's getting awful close to somebody else. Person in the car behind the man who was at his trunk pulls up and literally puts his front bumper just about at the guy's knees. I'm not kidding you. We're talking, using my shot put eyes, judging those distances. I'm telling you, that guy was probably within 3 to 4 inches of hitting the guy who was opening his trunk. That's not the part that's weird. Well, it is. Because why would you pull up so close to somebody? But as strange and weird as that may be, and unusual, the thing that really made me take a second look at what was going on was the fact that my man who was opening his trunk didn't flinch a little bit. I mean, didn't move, didn't acknowledge that the car was getting close to him, didn't even waver at all. It was like any of those movies you see where like people are standing doing the heroic pose and something is coming right at them and they don't flinch for a second, and finally the object stops moving, or the whatever it is that's getting right next to them, it just sort of stops and they don't react to it at all. That's pretty much what this guy did. It made me think of this. Well, I'm going to talk about them a little bit later, but Agent K from Men in Black in the first movie, where the spaceship, after they blew it up and it was coming towards K and J, J looks over at K for a second, but K is completely fixed on what's going to happen in front of him and he doesn't move at all. That's exactly what this guy did when the car was coming. He just didn't react to it at all. And I'm like, well, that's different. I understand if you feel the need to, I don't know, just have a little bit of discomfort knowing that a car is coming that close to you. And I'll be the first to tell you, I've worked in shops, had plenty of cars come through there that didn't have any brakes. And I've had plenty of people driving those cars real close to where I'm at. Now, that's a car that I actually know has no brakes on it. I know it doesn't have any brakes, and I act accordingly. Now, a car behind you that's just pulling into a parking space at a random shopping uh, supermarket, you don't know anything about that car or the person who's driving it. They just pull right up. You don't know if that person's brake line's about to blow like right then. You don't know. And I'm telling you, if it had, or if that person accidentally hit the gas instead of the brakes, dude's gonna run right into you and he's going to crush you from the knees down. But this guy just was like, I'm good. Did exactly what he was doing. Pulled out some bags from the back of his car and left like nothing happened. Now, to me, I mean, he didn't even acknowledge the guy after he got his bags. He just sort of slid out of the spot between the two cars, got his bags, and went to the store. And he had to go past the guy who parked there, and he didn't even acknowledge the guy at all. Just sort of like, okay, here you are, here I am, I'm going. No big deal. That's the end of it. And all I could think of right off the bat was, you gotta be kidding me, right? Really? You're just gonna do that? That's how we're working here? And apparently that is because my man just had no feeling that there was a vehicle behind him. It's like he just either he didn't know or he just didn't care or something of that neighborhood nature was going on. But whatever it was, I mean, I don't know if I could do it because personally, I would be like, I'd have to turn my head a little bit and say, "Hey, I'm right here. You actually crossed into my space. You see that line, that white line that's in front of you? You're supposed to stop before that white line. Everything inside that white line, mine. In front of you. Everything inside that white line, behind it, that's you. You stay behind it. I stay in front of it. Not this guy. Not this situation." He was like, "This is the way it's gonna be. I'm parking right here." And the other guy's like, "Okay, that's the way it's gonna be. I'm gonna just stand right here and hold my ground." I just, I don't know. I thought that was just really, really, really strange. Speaking of strange, oh, I was easily in seventh grade, and I believe it was going on the summer of seventh grade. I lived in Mayetta, New Jersey, a super small town, probably smaller than what you would find the ants were making underground above their ant under their ant hill. The town is so small, and just a back to back to back bunch of series of little towns. But of course, these are all were the great spots. I mean, it was good enough for a NASCAR champion, as I like to say. Martin Truex Jr. lived a street down from me, and once you went past where we were at, maybe 2 miles, if that, you'd move into another town. I think it was Eagleswood that was next, and then Smithville before you got into Tuckerton. And in the other direction from Mayetta, you move down in their Cedar Run, which is another really small little town. Great little quaint little spot. Loved it. Now, there was a really good, guess what, pizza place. It's called UC's. And a friend of mine recommended it when I moved up in that area. And just one of those weird idiosyncrasies that I have. And it started there, and it really helped develop the way I feel about pizza now. Is that I really don't ever, and that is personal, me spending my money, order pizza from a place that I've never been to. I don't do it. Like some people will be like, oh, well, there's a pizza menu. Let's just order from here. Well, if you're going to deliver it to me, I need to know where you're coming from. It's just a mental block that I had. And it was so bad that, like, when Domino's came to Manahawkin when I was living there as a kid, upper teens, really, just about graduating high school, we're talking 11th and 10th, 11th and 12th grade, I wouldn't order from there because I didn't know where it was physically located. I knew where the Pizza Hut was. I knew where the Little Caesars was. But I didn't know where the Domino's was, so I wouldn't order from there until I found out where it was. Same thing with any pizza place that I've known, even the ones that are around my house now. I knew of them. I walked into them to get the menu, and then I would order it. It's just some weird mental block that I have. And let me tell you how that goes right into another weird things. In fact, that's even better. Forget the story that I was about to tell because what I was going to talk about was, well, you could do them both. It's not like I don't have any time. So we'll continue this and then we'll go back into that. Now, I wanted to know where UC's was. And my aunt was like interested in finding out some of the little stuff that was around the area because we had just really moved there. Wasn't too long. So we walked a little bit south. I had to go south on Route 9, which is another thing altogether. I could talk about for hours. Route 9, the road that has more names than you could possibly imagine, and it goes from the very top of the state of New Jersey all the way to the bottom. Crazy road. You want to do a tour of New Jersey? Give yourself about 4 to 6 hours. Hop on Route 9, drive all the way up and all the way down, and you will absolutely see a nice little segment of New Jersey. But you'll definitely get from the top to the bottom. But anyway, we're walking because it's not real far to UC's. And in the middle of that walk, saw a very strange and unusual thing. First of all, this little town didn't really have very many people in it, and even though that the main road, Route 9, was full of traffic, this particular time there wasn't really any traffic going up and down. Usually you could safely see 4 or 5 cars, maybe a little spot, and another 4 or 5 cars, be something like that. It'd be pretty regular until rush hour when there was just cars everywhere on Route 9. And that's at every stretch of Route 9. But back to Mayetta and a little walk to go check out this pizza place. go up to it, and as we're walking, we see this lady who's outside, and you think everything's kind of normal because here she goes. She's what appeared to be raking some leaves, which was a little odd because we're talking it was early June, I believe. It'd be strange to have leaves being raked. And as we moved closer, we determined that she wasn't raking leaves. She didn't have a rake at all in her hand. She had a broom. And she was sweeping. You say, well, okay, sweep your sidewalk off, sweep your driveway out. Well, that's not exactly what she was doing. Now, this stretch of Route 9 didn't really have any sidewalks. It was just the white line and just the side of the road, no sidewalk. And the lady was right up by her house. She didn't have a driveway either. It turned out everything that was there was just dirt. And the lady was just taking that broom and sweeping the dirt. And there wasn't really anything to sweep. Like there wasn't like trash on the ground. It was just she was sweeping the dirt, physical dirt. That was it. The actual dirt on the ground. It was so weird because not only will you just hear the sound of the broom hitting the ground and sweeping the dirt, but at that point in time, no cars were going by. So you could really just hear the sound of the dirt getting moved around with the broom. And it wasn't like a slow sweeping where you just sort of like sweep and put things in piles. It was like a real rushed, real quick. You know that sweep when you're just trying to sweep up real quick and get a small pile of dirt out of the kitchen. It was that sort of vigorous, real quick sweep, and she was doing that for like the entire area around her house. This dirt, not grass, but just literal dirt. We just sort of moved past as quickly as we could because it just was so weird. The silence, the no cars at that point. Maybe they knew something we didn't. I don't know. But either way, we got past there, found Oosie's to satisfy my weird requirement of needing to know where the pizza place is before I ordered it. And then we moved back. Didn't even need to get a menu. It was just the place was there, and it was just sort of a small pizza place. Really nowhere to go in to eat. Just if you picked it up, you picked it up. But they always delivered. It just made more sense because it was such a small place on the inside. And that place was pretty decent pizza. And this goes back to where I was talking to about the weird my pizza eater idiosyncrasies because I have a lot of them, and this place Oosie's is one of the ones that helped create one of those things because as often as I ate there between 1990 yeah between September of 1990 and what was it 93 um 94 was it 94 95 94 95 like July of 94 my junior year the summer of my junior year not even my junior year but the summer before my junior year, 94. I can promise you that I had never stepped foot inside the place. Like, we went to it, we looked at it, saw it, and we left. And we had that lady who was sweeping funny. But that was the first time in my entire life that I had gone to a pizza place and ordered from it regularly. And we're talking, like I said, it was seventh and eighth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, summers. It was 4 years of ordering from that place, and they would always deliver. And I only went to it once. I drove past it a handful of times, well, more than a handful of times, when going up and down Route 9 with my friends, my mom, my uncle. We would go past it. But I never actually took one pinky toenail inside the door. Never went in. And that always felt strange to me. And that's why I came up with one of my weird pizza rules. And that's the one where I don't order pizza from a place that I've not been inside. And it all works out because it goes into all of my pizza rules. Never order from pizza places that I've never been inside. And part of that is because when I go inside, I can see what's going on as far as the pizza and how it's being cooked and who's cooking it and all these things. I can find out if they use a screen, which makes disgusting pizza. When it goes in a screen and it goes through um, a conveyor belt into that sort of oven like that, that is the worst pizza you will ever have. Just absolute garbage. So I need to see if that's the case. Every pizza place that I've ever gone to that I've liked, and I've been to a lot of them, one of the things that's always important and always just has to happen is the area that they make the pizza is front and center. So you can watch as they do it. It's part of the experience, watching them actually make it. Kind of like when you go to some really good high end places and the chef is right there and you can see what they're doing. It's the best pizza is always like that. Some of the worst garbage that I've ever eaten in my entire life as far as pizza goes is a pizza place where you go into it and you can't see them make the pizza. And yes, there are places like that. If you really stop and think about it, you'll go into them and you order the pizza and all of a sudden, boom, here it comes. What? How did that come from? Now ask yourself this question, because before you even think about talking to me about what I know what you're about to say, but you just mentioned Domino's, Little Caesar, and Pizza Hut. Well, I'll even throw in a few more. You can put in CC's, you can put in Papa John's. Those places are franchise pizza places, and when it comes to good pizza, those places don't count. They don't. It's like saying that you're gonna go and compare a McDonald's hamburger to one that you would get at, say, Chef Ramsay's restaurant. It's completely different. Totally different animal. Well, not different animal, because we know that they are all still made out of beef, or at least we suppose that McDonald's uses actual beef cows to make their burgers. But we're not going to get into that. That's even weirder than anything still. But the idea that I just said, that if you don't see the pizza being made, that it's not very good. Well, which is the weird thing that you need to really pay attention to, is if you do look at a Domino's, if you've been inside one, you will see them actually make the pizza if you go to the right Domino's. I've been to more than one, and you can look behind the counter and you can see the people actually making the pizza. I've seen it at Papa John's, I've seen it at Pizza Hut, and I've seen it at, yes, even Little Caesars. But they don't count because it's the same generic stuff. It's not the same quality as you're gonna get at a regular pizza place. But that's one of my own little weird idiosyncrasies, like I said, and it just so happened to make sense considering that the whole purpose was to go and see that pizza place, and we found the lady who was sweeping up the dirt in her yard, which was strange enough on its own. Now, I do have two other things, but I gotta kind of set it up in order for this to make sense, because these two things happened really relatively in recent memory. One was just a couple days ago, um, as I'm recording it, probably a week ago, as I'm recording. So we're talking like February 8th ish. And the other one happened probably about a year. It sounds about right, somewhere within the framework of a year ago. And both of these two things are highly unusual and very, very strange. And borderline something that I probably should have called someone about, especially considering my other background from being in management at Wawa and understanding food service and dates. And that's where we're going to sort of begin by giving you a description of one of the things that I was required to do in management, which was check dates all the time. All the time. There was a point in my 4 year tenure as a manager at Wawa where I was responsible for doing um, inventory. And in that inventory process, one of the most important things you have to do is you check the dates and stuff, because the first thing that we're trying to do is find out how much we have in the store. And the next thing we want to know is what are the dates of the things that we have in the store. Why does it matter so much to know what the dates are when you're just literally just trying to see, when your purpose is to just see how much you have? Well, if I could give you a little business, here it would be. Of course, you need to know how much product you have in your store. You have to know, because that knowledge tells you how much you're going to need as you sell it. For example, when I was doing my inventory, I'll just use whole milk. Whole milk comes in milk cartons. Well, the milk, well, not milk cartons, but the milk crates. You get 4 gallons of whole milk in one milk crate. So I count it. I'm going to use small, stupid, simple numbers, and I've got 30 gallons of whole milk. Now, like I said, it only comes in fours in the milk crate, meaning if, and we got it every 3 days. So let's say we wanted to keep it at 30. What the plan would be, roughly speaking, you don't really want to keep it at 30 because 28 is a more logical number, because that's 7 times 4, you get 28. But we have 30 right now. And we know that when the order is going to be coming up, which is going to be 2 days from now, so let's say it's Monday and I'm doing the inventory, we're getting more milk on Wednesday. I know that between Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to use up let's just, again, simple number, let's say I use up 15 gallons. People are going to buy 15 gallons of milk between Monday and Wednesday. Monday and Tuesday, they're going to buy 15 gallons of milk. And I know that in order to maintain and sustain how much milk I have, I want to keep it at that 30-ish number, which means for inventory purposes, I'm going to have to order 4 more milk crates of milk because that'll give me 16 more gallons, which will put me around that 30 number. I'll have 31. I'll be okay. So by the time Tuesday comes around and I have to make that order, I have to then know that I'm going to order 4 milk cartons, 4 milk crates worth of milk, which would be 16, which would put me back around that 30 number. So that's why you need to know how many you need. Now, the date, how is that important as far as the milk goes? Again, like I said, I'm getting somewhere. There is a point to this. You just got to follow me. Now, of course, the dates are important because you don't want stuff to go bad. Now, at Wawa, at the time, I don't know what it is now, gallons of milk were supposed to be thrown out and written off when they're 5 days before their expiration date. 5 days before. So, using that scenario, I counted it. I know I have 30 gallons of milk. Now, Tuesday, well, not even Tuesday, but on that Monday when I count the 30 gallons of milk, I learned because I looked at the dates on the milk that I expect to sell 15 gallons of milk. But amongst that 30, I have 12 gallons of milk that are inside of that 15, and they're inside of that 5 day period. So I have to remove those 12. I have to get rid of those 12, leaving me with 18 gallons of milk that are able to be sold. And I know that I'm expecting to sell 15. So I now know to make sure that I order, instead of the 16 gallons of milk that I was going to order, I'm going to order 32. Because I have to throw away 12. That way I know that I still have my 30 that I'm trying to maintain. So it's important to know the dates, because if the dates are off, you then need to readjust your ordering practice. You have to now order even more, because it doesn't make any sense to order just the 16 gallons of milk because you know you're going to sell 15 when you have to throw out 12. You're not going to have the number that you want to have on hand. Now that I've said that, I'm still not sure whether I'm going to throw these places under the bus, because this is some bad stuff that really made me think about actually making a few phone calls. But I decided against making the phone calls in both instances. The first one that happened about a year ago was at a supermarket, and my mother wanted some produce, and she went in there and looked through it, and immediately I saw the produce worker was close to the door looking at some of the vegetables that were closer to the door when we came in, and then the produce worker walked across, straight across, like sort of looking at everything that was in that aisle. Now, we moved closer to it, and I took a look right after the produce worker had walked right past the specific vegetables. They were um, peppers, and I walked by them, and the only thing I could see was that these peppers were moldy and rotten. It was disgusting. It was really bad. At that point, I was trying to tell my mother, I don't know if we want to get anything from this place because literally the produce worker was right here and walked right past them. And the thing that really bothers me is when we got there, it wasn't like we got through those doors at 7 o'clock when the store opened up. Uh-uh. It was after my mother had come back from dialysis. It was 10:30 by the time we got to that store, meaning that in the perfect world, that produce person had already walked the entire produce section and would have been doing so for at least 3 hours, almost 4 hours. And they didn't notice that those peppers were all rotten. I have a picture of it to this day on my phone. It was disgusting. In fact, I need to know exactly when it was because it was so nasty and it made me like lose my mind when I thought about it. It was like, what is going on with this? Because it was so disgusting. Where are you at? I know you're close. Man, is those peppers just threw me for a loop. It was so bad. Not like I'm gonna show you, because they were really, really disgusting. But if I can find the date that it actually happened, pretty much for my own mental clarity here. It's too far. I can tell you this is like the number one problem with having a million pictures on your phone. Because it was so bad. And I remember it so vividly. Like, I'll never forget this. If I could just get in here and find this picture for my own. I would have thought it was coming up pretty close. I don't think I deleted it because it was so bad. Well, I can't find it. Unfortunately, I'm not Joe Rogan with his guy who's usually right there to just look up this stuff for him. But boy, I'm only give it a few seconds more. If I can't find it, I can't find it. And we're gonna move on to the next part of this because there is more. Only a second more. I feel like I'm getting close. Apparently, I did the right thing and decided that that nastiness doesn't have any point, and I got rid of it. Goldfish. And I those are twice baked potatoes. That's not what I'm looking for. Blue moon. I can certainly say it's amazing just how many pictures of pizza that I have. It certainly says a lot. Ah, here they are. Yeah, got them. Rotten peppers with a mold. The question I have is when was this? Oh, it wasn't even that day. I thought it was a dialysis day. It wasn't even that day. It was not even a year ago, but it was a couple years ago. It was December. It was December 3rd, 2023. So we're talking almost 3 years ago. But my goodness, the disgusting mold on these things was terrible. And like I said, the produce department person walked right past it, didn't see it, didn't notice it. And it wasn't like it was just one bag of peppers. It was like a bunch of bags of peppers that were no good. And they needed to get rid of them, but they were just not doing it. And it was not a good situation. And I definitely probably should have called somebody on that one because, like I said, they weren't in any way interested in their rotting produce. And then, of course, another thing that happened, like I said, just a few weeks ago, was very, very unusual and very, very horrible. Um, Snapple made some really cool bottles that they used for the Fantastic Four movie when it came out. Now, normally I wouldn't really think much of it except for the fact that it popped in my mind that, well, whenever they sent out that promotional sort of stuff, they usually send it out before the movie starts. And the Fantastic Four came out in July of 2025. So this stuff would usually rolled out into stores probably around early June, mid June, and they had these Snapple bottles at this store, which again I'm not going to mention the name of the store because I saw this one like a week ago. Go into the store and here's more Fantastic Four bottles. Now, instantly, as a Marvel fan, that just caught my attention. And then, as a former Wawa manager who had to do inventory of certain things, it caught my attention again because I realized that, well, that movie had been out since July, and I've got a hard copy of it, and it's on Disney Plus where you can easily stream it. The movie is out of the theater for a while. I mean, July, August, September, October, November, December. You know, it's been 7 months since this movie has been out, and that made me pause. And I looked at the date on the Snapple, and the Snapple was expired by 2 weeks. And I was like, ugh. Now, from my perspective, maybe it's just me. Knowing that one of the things that we had to do at Wawa when I was working there and doing those inventories, like I said, I had to check the dates. And especially when you work overnight or anytime, second shift or day shift, doesn't make any difference. They usually sent somebody to walk around to just check dates on stuff, especially slow moving things. And these Snapples, you're going to say, how is Snapple slow moving? Well, because you have the Snapple in the refrigerator cases, and then you have the Snapple that just sits on the shelf. The average people out there are going to go and grab the one that's in the refrigerator case. I'm usually a warm kind of soda guy or a juice guy, so my eyes usually go towards the ones that are sitting on the shelf. Now, just because of that, that makes it slow moving because it's not in the refrigerator. So, regardless of what it is, as far as juice or soda, they don't move as fast if they're not in the refrigerated case. They just don't. And so, somebody fumbled pretty big time because that stuff was sitting there, like I said, for 2 weeks past its expiration date, and it's just kind of hanging there. Just say, hey, we're here. Now, I know for sure where my point is. Like I said, that's really unusual for those establishments to have missed, especially the the peppers. That one was terrible. There's really no reason why you missed that because you literally had been open for hours, and that stuff isn't going to just sprout that quickly. This is just by looking at it. And I understand that mold and spores do kind of pop up kind of fast, but in order for the amount of growth that was there, you're not going to just look at it one day and it's not going to be there and not see that little spot starting to get bigger. It probably takes a day, maybe even two, in order to get that much mildew in the area of the vegetable. And you literally were there all morning long and you didn't notice it. That one should definitely have rung a bell. Now, I understand, like I said, as far as the Snapple goes, that one could have slipped through the cracks a little bit easier because, well, it's simple to not notice the slow moving things. Because sometimes you're not worried about it. You think about the stuff in your cold case, and the vendors come and they put that stuff away, and nobody's really paying any attention to it because it's just slow moving and nobody really thinks about it. But one of the things that we had to do at Wawa every time was like every day people would have to walk around and just sort of check to see what's there. And in that process, you would pick up on stuff like that. Oh, and typically, especially in management, you'd be on the register a lot of times in the small stores, and you know that there are certain items that you don't scan very often. And when something comes up that you know that you haven't scanned in like a couple of days, and then you think to yourself, "Oh, I haven't scanned that in a while," and then you realize when you scan something, "Oh, that's the first time I've ever scanned that." It makes you think maybe I should check the date because of the infrequency of how often we turn the thing over. But apparently, in those cases with the peppers and the Fantastic Four Snapple, nobody was thinking. And for me, as a manager who's run stores like those, I find that very strange and very, very unusual. And now I want to go with one last one, and then we're going to end the main event. And this one's like my favorite strange and unusual thing. And bear with me, this is the one that makes me wonder sometimes if it really happened or not, because I know it did. And in my mind, it just seems so much weirder because every time I think about it, it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. But here's what happened, and I like to use um, the statement, "I will tell you this sitting inside a church with my hand on a truckload of Bibles and swear to you that this happened." I'm telling you, 100%, this definitely happened. And I can't explain it, nor can any of the other people who were with me during that time. We can't explain any of this. None of it. But I'm telling you, I'm telling you, this was true and did in fact happen. Whew. I was seventh grade, and my cousin would have been in fifth grade, and his brother would have been third grade, I guess. But yeah, young. Yeah, it's not right. Third, five, 3, 5, 7. That all makes sense. Yeah, because I'm 2 years older than my cousin Dan, 5 years older than his brother. That's correct. So I believe I was in seventh grade. There was a show that some of you may be old enough to know, and if you are a fan of some of those free streaming services, you can find it. And I'm really sure that I'm thinking I never thought about looking it up, but I'm gonna have to look for it now. It's a show called Unsolved Mysteries. Robert Stack was the creepy guy who was telling the stories and moderating the show. And we always used to love the idea of Robert Stack because every single time they would go ahead and have him speak about a situation that was going on throughout the show, they literally couldn't have found the creepier spot for him to stand in and talk the whole time. It was always dark. He was always wearing a trench coat. It was always some place that you probably didn't want to be. And if you were there, you couldn't wait to leave. That's the kind of place we're talking about. he would be in dark alleys and cemeteries and all kinds of weird spots that just looked like you shouldn't be there. And that's exactly where he was. I've often said that when I saw him in those places, and he was talking about all kinds of stuff in that show, like missing people, people missing time, treasures that people were looking for. Occasionally, there'd be an alien story, questions about life after death, all kinds of stuff that he would talk about in Unsolved Mysteries. One time, speaking to my cousins at one point, seeing him in one of those creepy spots, I could see him right now in that situation where an alien would show up, and we all of us would say, yeah, we could see Robert Stack diving, tackling the alien, and saying, "Ha, I got you." That's just the whole scenario that he was working with, and that show always creeped me out to a point when I was younger, because it turned out that that show came on Wednesday nights after prayer service at Mount Zion Baptist Church when we used to go in there. Um, and what made that so weird was that show came on at like 8 o'clock, I believe it was, and my main responsibility was to take out the trash, which meant that I had to drag the cans from the back of the house up to the front to be taken up at the street. And it was always dark on Gunning River Road, almost no lights. In fact, it was a perfect spot for Robert Stack to have showed up. In fact, I'm surprised he wasn't just walking around up and down on Gunning River Road, because it was really that kind of creepy spot where very little light at that time. And I used to always remember running in the house when that happened, because boy, here comes the aliens that he was just talking about. Now, back to seventh grade. My cousin tells me, because, was it seventh grade? I don't remember if it was now. It must have been, because, again, I have to actually check this, because it seems like, nah, it was later. It was much, much later. In fact, I thought I was that young, but I wasn't that young. It wasn't seventh grade at all, because it was after the Men in Black movie came out. And it was like a year or so after Men in Black. Considerable, because Men in Black, I'm just looking it up, that came out in 97, which means that this situation must have happened in like 98 or 99. It was somewhere in that range. So at this point, I was out of high school, and I think my cousin Dan was out of high school too. He must have been, because I graduated in 90. He graduated in 98. And then my other cousin would have been sophomore-ish, I think, something like that. That all makes sense now, because I'm thinking to myself, it didn't make sense to think that Matt, his brother, was young, was really, really, really young, like little kid. Like, I'm thinking third grade. That didn't sound right to me when I was doing the math in my head, and it couldn't have been, because the Men in Black movie didn't come out until '97, and this episode of Unsolved Mysteries was after the Men in Black movie. So that makes a lot more sense. That it was probably around 98 or 99. But I remember getting a call, and it was from Dan specifically. He goes, "Hey, just was watching Unsolved Mysteries. You got to check this out. We taped it." They were talking about the Men in Black. And I was like, all right, sounds cool. I'm going to go over there anyway. So I said, let me go over there. We'll hang out. We'll watch this episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Check out the Men in Black thing, right? And this is where it gets really weird and really unusual. We go, we watch the Men in Black episode. They talked, and of course, at this point in time, we were always into those conspiracy theory shows. They would always come on at some stupid time at like 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd be up watching that crazy stuff. And Men in Black was a topic that definitely came up from time to time. So the fact that a mainstream TV show that was on NBC, I think, was where Unsolved Mysteries came on, um, that they would talk about the Men in Black actually existing, it was really kind of crazy. So we sat down, we watched that show, and it was crazy because we're like, whoa, they're these guys. Like sometimes they looked human, sometimes they looked humanoid. They weren't actually even humans, so that like some of them were actually perhaps aliens themselves who were part of this Men in Black situation. They were showing that yeah, they actually did wear the black suits and the hats, the glasses, and they were just that's what they were, right? But this is where it gets strange. Like I told you, my cousin had taped the episode so we could watch it. We watched it, saw the weird details and all that stuff that was going about it. And then it just seemed like we lost a little bit of time. Like, for real. Time was not there. We lost time. Like, the next thing that I personally remember was waking up around 10 o'clock, which wasn't unusual when we stayed up watching that stuff. Sometimes we'd sleep until noon, but it was 10. I'll never forget. I specifically remember it being 10 because we fell asleep in the living room. And when we fell asleep, we got up, moved around a little bit because nobody took out. We watched the show, and then it was like we just were asleep. Got up, like I said, like 10 o'clock, and Dan and I went to go look around and saw that the TV was still on. But now, for those of you who are of a certain age, like myself, a few years younger, you'll remember that when you had a VHS tape and it sat inside of the uh, the VCR and it finished, the first thing that VHS tape would do was would go all the way to the very end. It would stop and it would rewind itself. And depending on how good your VCR was, it might turn the VCR off after it rewound and sat there for a little while, the power saving mode. Now, when we got up, the TV was still on, the VCR was off. Dan woke up, he hit the power button to turn the VCR back on, and he hit the eject button because he wanted to get the tape out of there, the tape with the Men in Black. Again, I'm telling you this story inside of a church with my hand on a. In fact, I'm gonna be. Hold on. I need you to. I need you to know how serious I am about what I'm about to say. Bible. I'm telling you. After we got up and he hit eject on the VCR, the tape was gone. The tape that had the Men in Black episode of Unsolved Mysteries was gone. Never saw it again. No idea where it went. It was gone. Telling you it was gone. 100%, it was gone. So, I'm not speculating. I'm not insinuating anything. But I'm telling you that we watched the tape, weren't really sure what happened after that. The rest of the night was blank. Get up in the morning, and the tape is gone. It was very, very strange and very, very unusual. Now, I'm going to let you decide what you think happened to the tape, but I don't have the slightest clue what happened to the tape. I can definitely speculate what could have happened to the tape. And that would go under the realm of conspiracy theory. And we're talking 30 years ago now. And I think we're just going to leave that alone because I'd rather not have this podcast interrupted and me not remember what I recorded and have all my stuff disappear after what I just said. On that note, I'm going to ring the bell and going to end this show right. Well, not the show. Going to end the main event right here. Now, it is time for the Spear of the Week. And that one's an easy one. Turned out that before I started recording, I looked outside and it was flurrying. No. 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 That's the Spear of the Week. Snow. Mm-mm. Nope. I'm not interested in that at all. That's 100% the Spear of the Week. The snow that was falling before I recorded. And now, what are we going to go with? We're going to go with the question, or are we going to go with the three? I think I went with the three last time. I cannot remember if it was a three. Let me see. I thought it was the. But I know I didn't do. Well, I did one of each. I'll do the three then. But I like the question that I found. Well, I dropped the question. So by default, I will do the three. No, I dropped the three, so by default, I'll do the question. And the question is. Do you wear sunglasses indoor to look cool or stylish? The answer to that question, do I wear sunglasses indoors to look cool or stylish? Well, the answer is no. I don't wear sunglasses indoors to look cool or stylish. Now, if I were to tell you, what would it have been? If you saw me from 2009 back, all the way from 2009 till about 90, 95, 96, 96. Yeah, 95. The summer of 95, going into my senior year, where I ended up scratching a cornea in my eye. I wore sunglasses all the time. All the time. In fact, indoor, outdoor, didn't make any difference. I wore sunglasses all the time. And got to the point where I would even get cheap sunglasses, rebuild them, make them better. Bought myself a pair of Oakleys, I believe my first year in junior college at OCC. I just, I loved sunglasses. I loved wearing them. But part of the reason was because the light bothered me. It just did. And it would give me some headaches at times because and I imagine that there was a portion of that made it so bad that it was just, I added to it. But in 2009, I simply stopped wearing sunglasses. I just did. Almost like an alcoholic cold turkey, stopped wearing sunglasses. And I do have a reason why I stopped. It's very specific, and I keep it to myself. But I will say this, from 2009 until I got my Trax, Chevy Trax, in 2024, I really didn't wear sunglasses a single day. Not once. Now, I've had my eyes dilated since then, and I've had those weird little glasses that you put on there, but even with that, I didn't keep them on, and I have a specific reason for why I didn't. But I can tell you that I thought about getting a pair of sunglasses until I got the Trax, which allowed me not to even get sunglasses still. When I say that, I don't even have transitional lenses in my regular glasses. And if it weren't for the windows being tinted when I bought the Trax, I wouldn't have that either. But like I said, very, very specific reason why I do not wear sunglasses. And I did at one point. Used to wear them everywhere all the time, but since 2009, I have not, and I don't have any plans on doing so. So that's that little question. Next week, I'm going to be asking the question, and I'm going to be trying to figure out the three things put together, what is similar. But now, it's time to put the show towards end. And how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to ask you to join us, be part of us, join us, the Facebook group, the LIP Facebook group, join us. There is room for one more. There's always room for one more. Join us. Check me out on Instagram at Philip Henderson 5102. Check out my content that's on there. More importantly than that, I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel at Phil the Lip on YouTube, where you're going to be able to find this episode, many others, and I would hope that you would subscribe, because it's more than just the lip. There's a few other little things that I put on there from time to time to entertain you, and I hope that you would take advantage of those. But as for now, it is time for the words of wisdom. And today's words of wisdom are: just because a person has a lot of knowledge doesn't mean they can use it wisely. One more time. Just because a person has a lot of knowledge doesn't mean they can use it wisely. In other words, you can have tons and tons of smarts. You can be highly intelligent, be the smartest person in the world. But to have all that knowledge doesn't do you any good without understanding how to use it, or as Dax in Star Wars Episode 2, here I go using another Star Wars reference, when he was talking to Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm going to paraphrase, he said that the Jedi always don't have a problem knowing the difference between knowledge and wisdom. There's a difference. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but you have to have the wisdom in order to use it properly. And on that note, my name is Phil. Oh, yeah, that's it. My name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.
That was easy.